Hey guys, I guess we're live. Sorry, I was adjusting my lighting in here. So I'm Dr. Upshaw, medical director at NeuroSpa, and this is our second YouTube live video. So thanks for joining us. Um, our first YouTube live ended up generating a lot of questions, which we're kind of hoping to answer here. So if you guys are joining us for the first time, again, I'm Dr. Upshaw, I'm the medical director at NeuroSpa, where we do TMS. TMS is a treatment for depression that does not use medications, uses basically magnetic pulses to stimulate certain areas of the brain to kind of restore normal brain functioning. So there's no side effects to it, tends to work a little bit better than medication. But what we're here today to talk about is coronavirus outbreak and kind of some tips for your mental health, anxiety, your overall health, and to see if we can't offer some advice. Luckily, I'm going to be joined by a special guest today, Michelle Gobea, who I'll introduce in a couple minutes. So again, I want to thank everyone for watching our first YouTube Live. If you found it helpful, if you find this one helpful, please like our channel, subscribe to our channel. What we're trying to do here is really kind of get a community together of patients who attend NeuroSpa, people in the community, and kind of increase awareness about mental health. And what prompted us to go ahead and start this was obviously the coronavirus outbreak and the challenges that's presented. And I'll tell you, as a psychiatrist, seeing patients every day still, either by video chat or in the TMS clinic, it's been a lot of unique challenges for people, and hopefully we can kind of touch on that a little bit today. Before we kind of get into that, I want to kind of acknowledge that some people are dealing with more than others. And so, if you've lost your job or you don't have a source of income, that is some very real significant stress. If you are infected with the COVID right now, COVID-19, or you have a family member who's highly susceptible to having complications, that also is a lot of increased stress. And I just want to kind of emphasize the point that if you're having serious mental health problems, you really should seek professional help. What we're here to do today is to kind of give some more practical tips to the average person who's dealing with the effects of social distancing. Maybe you had pre-existing depression or anxiety. Maybe you're dealing with a higher level of stress and anxiety than you're used to. That's kind of what we want to focus on today. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our guest today, see if the director here of the program, hey, there she is. This is Michelle Gobea, for those of you who don't know her. I kind of want to introduce her a little bit. She is an entrepreneur in town. She is the owner and founder of Soho Cycling Studio, which has been in business over 10 years. I'm happy to say that I'm a member of her Soho Cycling community. Enjoy the classes very much, but also her cycling studio allows her to be a great philanthropist to the area as well. So she is a local Tampa person, just like myself. And I'm very happy that she's able to join us today to kind of talk about issues with the COVID-19 health, anxiety, and depression. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you, Dr. Upshaw. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so what I'd like to start off with, if you don't mind, is you kind of sharing with people a little bit of what you're going through kind of personally in terms of like your business and staying at home and kind of how it's affected you.
Well, like you said when you were introducing me, we've had the studio for 11 years this summer, so 10 years we celebrated. And I can say that for myself, this is super stressful and kind of one of these times that I've been lucky enough, I guess, that I've never really dealt with a lot of anxiety, but this has certainly put me into a place that I have struggled with it a little bit. I think every night I'm just overwhelmed. We have 32 people that live or work at the studio, and an amazing community, and just to have the doors shut down. And I think Dr. Upshaw, that about 3 years ago we took over a fairly large loan to be able to reopen or expand, I'm sorry, and open on another side of the building and kind of upgrade and do a bunch of things. And so as a small business, we just kind of go month to month. And until we, get the loans and all those kinds of things paid back. So to just shut the doors down and then be told you don't know when you're really going to be able to reopen has definitely upped my level of stress and anxiety. So that's definitely been a struggle these last couple of weeks.
And on a personal level, have you noticed anything in terms of what you're doing to deal with this increased stress?
Um, yeah, of course. I think for me, I'm not in a cycling environment. We're loud and we like, the atmosphere of kind of like that distraction of the music. And so I've never been one that has really done with meditation, but there's some great free podcasts out there, and I don't think I could sit through a long interval one, but there's some really good ones that are 5 to 20 minutes that just kind of help me get in the mindset in the morning, and kind of put me into a place that, life doesn't have to be perfect to be good. So you just kind of focus on the stuff that you are grateful for in the morning and kind of keep it moving that way. This isn't going to last forever. So we just kind of have to put that out of our head and make sure that you just focus on what you can control at the current moment, I think. So meditating has been a good thing for me, and also reading, because I don't really have a ton of time when we are in full swing in business. So it's been really nice to be able to have the downtime to pick up a book or concentrate on those things. Sometimes breath work helps me. But probably
Yeah, so
meditating is
that's
the thing.
that's good, and I'm hearing that from a lot of people who I'm still seeing in my clinics is that they're trying to kind of take advantage of some of the extra time that they have to do some of those things, and they are finding it helpful for kind of helping with the anxiety and the stress of kind of being stuck at home. I wanted to ask you something. So I'm still working, seeing patients via telehealth, still going into the TMS clinics where we're doing social distancing and kind of doing some other protocols to make sure that everyone stays safe. But for me, I'm still kind of going into work every day, and I know my wife is a dentist, and they've closed down all dental offices. And one thing she's told me is that as a professional woman, she really has struggled kind of being home and not being able to kind of go be that self that's out there working. Has that been something that you've been aware of for yourself?
Yeah, I think a lot of the people that are probably struggling with this we're all super active and we have our routines, and we have, even if it's not work. I mean, I go get coffee with someone on my breaks, or just lunch with someone. You have all these these filler things that we have going on in our lives. So I think that that's probably part of a struggle for a lot of people, is you just have this quiet and this time with your thoughts. And there's not there's a lot of time to be in your own head right now. So I think there is kind of a struggle because I have so much downtime, but I've tried to, I've cleaned every closet. I've been productive. So I think that's been helpful. I have, bags of clothes that I could give away, getting ready for a new summer. But I have a 2-year-old, so that's been a little
Oh
intense
yeah.
because she's on full move. And that's part of what I've been trying to focus on is, again, this is not going to be forever. So if I can just use this month or whatever it is that I can really put time into her. And I've been trying to really focus on that time, but then I also need my own break. So it's just been a little bit of a different balance going on right now.
Yeah, and so we actually got some questions ahead of time for this event once we announced what the theme was. And that's one of the questions that we got a lot, is for tips for dealing with kids at home. So for me, my kids are a little bit older right now. I have a fifth grader and two sixth graders. So we're dealing with the whole online learning. But for the most part, they kind of can entertain themselves pretty well. But for you, you have a very young child at home. Um, so, I mean, do you have any advice that you could kind of give on that from your perspective?
Amazon's been my friend, so I'm trying to do your Google, just looking up little things to do. I mean, I can't paint her nails every single day, which she would like. So like um, puzzles and things like that, reading books, just being outside really. Bike rides have been great. We've been bike riding every day, probably for about an hour a day, or walks with her if we can. So that's really it.
Yeah, and
two-year-old.
so from the kind of the professional side of things, one thing that has been kind of out there a lot, I'm member of a lot of professional groups where we've been kind of talking about how are we talking to our patients about this. The one big thing is to try to give yourself a break, in terms of like trying to keep things too organized and to have a lot of grace with the kids right now because they're kind of cooped up in the house as well.
Right.
So that's kind of like the professional talking point on that, at least. So we're starting to get some questions coming in, but I wanted to, before we get into the questions, I wanted to kind of ask you, just from my own standpoint, have you been in touch with the Soho community much? Like how's everyone doing? Are you still kind of trying to stay involved, in terms of like the studio? What's that looking like?
Um, I think the really cool thing that everybody's being able to utilize right now is Zoom. And so we've been getting on, at least with the instructors, we've been getting on Zoom once a week, and we've been doing a happy hour, which I think is so fun. It's just been really nice to have a check-in with each other, see how everybody's doing mentally. A handful of the instructors are still working, and then a handful are not, and they're kind of in the same place that we are, stuck at home. But Ryan is one of our instructors, and he calls it a vibe check. And so we've been having a happy hour vibe check once a week where we all grab a drink. It doesn't have to be alcoholic, but we sit around and we just have a 20-minute check-in with each other and see how everybody's lives are going, just to see each other's faces and smile. And one thing I say a lot in my classes is that if you change your face, it'll change your chemistry. And so if you slide a smile on your face, it, brings your mood up. So it's been really nice to connect with each other that way, as instructors and, teammates. But other than that, we've been getting on Instagram and having instructors send personal messages out just to our community of riders, just to say, be strong, keep your head up. This is going to be over soon, and we're here for you if you need us. So Zoom and social media has definitely been great to connect. And I see it all over with people posting that they're, groups of 5, 10, 15, 20 people are all getting together and getting on Zoom and being able to connect with each other. I actually had to see one of my friends' weddings that way that got
Oh my
canceled
gosh.
due to this. So they still got married, but they used Zoom, and the pastor was in St. Pete and married them. And so I think that's definitely been a huge outlet for people right now, is in being able to check in and have FaceTime, I guess, when you can't have the personal connections one-on-one in the same room.
Yeah, it's interesting as a mental health professional, it's kind of like the way that things go kind of wrong for people in terms of like anxiety and depression and things like that are usually pretty typical based on some pretty typical situations, like someone's got marital problems or they're struggling at work. But
Right.
this whole thing is such a new experience for everyone. It's like on a weekly basis, I'm getting all this information and still trying to make sense of all of this. So like when I hear you say a Zoom wedding, it's like I can't even really wrap my mind around that.
It-
And like, and how does that affect, the people who got married and the people who are close to them and couldn't attend? It's like all of these things that we haven't thought about before. And what is that going to do, over the next few weeks and months? And that's really one of the big reasons we want to try to stay connected like this, is to kind of like just reach out to people, talk about this stuff, and really kind of get a feel for what the problems are so we can kind of help people, make sense of it and maybe even offer some practical tips. Um, but I wanted to say, like, as someone who comes to your studio, from the other side, doing things like that are so important to connecting with other people outside of your family, outside of work. And, like you always say in your classes, it's really a time to kind of disconnect. And I'm wondering, how that's affecting people not having that outlet. I know it's just been a couple weeks, but I mean, I guess you probably haven't heard too much from people on kind of how they're dealing with that, because I'm sure it's a big loss for some people not being able to come to your studio.
I think so. I mean, a ton of people have been saying they miss us or they can't wait to get back, or they'll post about, they're on a bike ride, but it's not Soho Cycling. I think that that's like the beauty of a lot of group workouts, is that there's such an energy that, we all provide when we're in a room. And I like to brag, about the people that go to our studio, because we have such a good, strong community. and you being a part of it, Dr. Upshaw, you do so much. I think that's why what you're doing is so great, but you're also like such a good human. You're out there like doing community work, and you're in the community, like giving back, just like with GMF, Ride the Park that you just did for us. So thank you again. But we have such a good, strong group of people. And I think it does take a toll when you get to surround yourself with good energy and positivity, and then it's kind of taken away from you, and then now you're isolated on a day-to-day basis. I mean, I think we're all going a little like nuts over it. That's why I think like getting outside and like taking time, at least like whatever you can manage to move your body and get your, the blood flowing and your adrenaline, and to stay on course with that it's not just your physical, it's so good for your mental, just to keep, a walk or working out, whatever it is that you can afford to do every day. I know that I'm missing it. I think everybody's is missing it too. So it's just we're, like watching the
Yeah.
clock.
Yeah, well, hopefully we can get back soon. I mean, that's going to be the real question is what do we've all made it through the first couple of weeks, but what do the next couple of weeks kind of look like? And that's a question I don't think we know the answer to.
I think that's what
Yeah,
gives everybody anxiety, is the unknown,
yeah,
the fear of the unknown. I think that's what does it, not knowing what the future leads to is definitely can make you anxious.
yeah. I guess if we knew this was going to be over on May 15th for sure, I think everyone would be feeling a lot better about it for sure. Yeah. So actually, we're going to start getting into some questions, and what I'll do is I'll read the question out, and then either you and I can kind of jump in and start answering them. But we've kind of already answered the first one from Amber, which is, how do you think social distancing might impact both those who are more socially interactive and those who might be more introverted? So, I think we were just talking about that, which is like someone who's a little bit more socially active. I would put you in that category for sure. Missing being out with your friends or getting coffee or having those little, micro little interactions with people all day long is a big deal. But I would put some people who may go to your studio as kind of maybe an introvert, and going to your studio may be the one time that they're able to, in a structured environment, connect with other people, and people might know their name and say hello. Because even if you're introverted, it's still important to connect with other people.
Right, I agree. Yeah. So this may be a little harder, obviously, maybe for them, or I don't know, maybe easier. I feel like for me, yeah, I think the worst part about it is even just seeing people out on the streets, and then you have to like stay so far back. I don't know. It's definitely it's affecting me as a social person. It puts me on edge seeing other people, because you don't even know what to do with yourself. It's hard to have constraint. My husband won't even let me be the one to go to the grocery store, because he thinks that I'm gonna like hug, the cashier. So I'm really like in a cage over here. So I know it's affecting me pretty hard, but I think it's giving me a lot of gratitude, and for when this can be over, for what we all had. I think we probably lost sight of how lucky we are on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and that's an interesting philosophical question: is what do things look like when this ends? Do we go back to kind of how things were, or do things change a little bit?
For example, if I'm a hugger, and how, in classes, my thing is I like to, after like a really hard set, at least once in a class, I like you to look at your neighbor and give a high five. And to me, it's like a transfer of energy. And now, like, what do you do? Like you said, are we doing elbows? Are we just smiling and waving? Like, are we all going to be too nervous or scared to go back to what we had? I don't know. It's going to be interesting,
Yeah,
definitely, to find
I
out.
have no idea. So here's another question. This one's interesting. I can't tell. I'm trying not to look over here. We got a whole line of questions over here. I got another device open, but the guy who's running the show here, David, he's typing some of the questions in so I can read them on the screen here. And I don't see who asked this one, but the question is, how can someone who's an emotional eater cope in a healthy way during this time of so much stress and isolation?
Oh man.
Well, I'll tell you this. Um, hope my wife doesn't get mad at me for sharing this, but that's one thing that she's talked about is that she feels like she's kind of stuck. And these days, all our houses are kind of more open. That's kind of the trend, and so your kitchen is kind of the focal point, and you're just in the kitchen all the time. So I guess it's pretty easy to, if you are an emotional eater, get sucked in to kind of going through the kitchen several times a day, and kind of eating things that are unhealthy. Um, so
I guess
any thoughts?
the thing would be to not buy it right now if you know that you're stuck in the house and that's kind of your downfall. Maybe you just have to, we're all not supposed to be going only to the store like as limited amount of time as possible. So maybe like the helpful part of it, if you can't be as active as you want to be, would be to not try and not buy it. I know it may be hard. I'm drinking a lot of wine these days, and so I'm kind of in that same category, but with the wine. But I mean, I wouldn't beat yourself up too much for it. I mean, if that's what's going to get you through at the same time, I don't know. I would not buy it, I guess, if you could get away with that.
Yeah, that's some good practical advice for sure. If it's, I know that's how I am with ice cream. If it's not in the house, I don't eat it. And then when they buy it, I eat it. So the question we got a lot before we started here, we're getting some questions in, was some like practical tips about exercising at home because we're stuck in the house. We may not have access to, the cycling studio or our gym that we usually have. So I don't know if that's come up in the community. Any tips that you've offered people for staying, a little bit active during this?
Um, I mean, I think YouTube is such a great outlet, or anything that you may want to Google. There's so many people on YouTube that have a passion for what they're doing that have already made videos, and it's free. So I think a lot of us are in financial constraints right now, and so instead of having to go out, I mean, or there's a lot of great apps. And there's even some local studios here locally that have actually gone virtual. So you could still support your local community and go that way. Or if you're in a financial constraint, you can go to YouTube. I love a girl named Sydney Cummings. She's on YouTube, and I like her because she's not yelling at me or in my face, but her workouts are hard, and I get a great sweat. I actually used her a lot when I was trying to get rid of some baby weight. And I was kind of stuck in the house, or just walking outside. Steven, our manager, has been doing some cute videos. I mean, he used a case of Gatorade the other day because he doesn't have weights. So I know if it was me, I could have plenty of wine bottles I could use right now. So I think it's just getting creative, finding anything at home. But I think YouTube is such a great resource right now.
Yeah, that's some actually very practical, good advice. Cindy Cummings is her name?
Sydney, yeah, Sydney
Sydney.
Cummings, yeah.
If David, the director, is super resourceful, he could maybe Google her and put a little link up on a banner or something. Let's see if he can pull that together.
Oh,
Good,
she's
that's
great.
your challenge.
10-minute, abs, 30-minute workouts, 60-minute workouts. She has, if you want to do booty or arms or HIIT classes or stuff like that. Or, Rainier and I, my husband, we did yoga the other day on our patio just to stretch, and again, bike riding and stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah, and actually, we just answered Rachel's question. She had said, since my gym is closed, what are some household items I can use at home to work out? And like, I think your tip about trying to find someone who's on YouTube and has a little workout for you to do is great. I also loved your advice about getting outside and getting some fresh air. There's a lot of research these days in the field of psychiatry about light, especially early morning light, as something that's helpful for depression. Also, fresh air if you're cooped up in the house. Just obviously, you should be able to maintain social distancing while you do that, but getting outside, you'd be surprised how good that is for your mental health to take a quick walk. I want to share this with you real quick, Michelle. David wanted to make sure to let you know that you could apply for the $10,000 economic injury disaster loan. And then also, I know we have talked about the payroll protection. So, this isn't a,
thank you.
financial podcast, but that's very good advice.
Yes, to everybody, actually. I already did that, David. Thank you so much. I was on it very quickly. Thank you.
That's awesome. All right. And then I want to acknowledge that Amber was asking about coming out of the crisis because she's a therapist. can we be different people from this experience? And I know that you and I were talking about that as well, kind of philosophical standpoint, what this could do.
I don't know how you can't not come out of this at least somehow changed. So hopefully it's all for the better for all of us. Um, Taking a pause, right? Just to be better humans, better to ourselves and to each other, I think.
Yeah, I mean that's hopefully. I mean, you look at history. It's been a while since Americans have had to go through something like this, and if you look historically, we tend to come out better on the other side. So hopefully that would happen again. Um, I was looking over here because I'm seeing in the chat there's a bunch more stuff. David also says you're not stuck in your house. Do gardening, sit outside, take a walk. So that's a really good point. That people have been using the term shelter in place, which is a term that's typically used like with you know nuclear war or something like that. That we don't have to exactly. So or like an active shooter, God forbid. But it's like we have to just social distance, try to not be around other groups of people or other individuals. So yes, getting outside and doing, we talked about walking, but other things like that is good. I got another question here from Christina. It says, watching the news is giving me a lot of anxiety. How can I stay informed without watching the news? What are your
You want to
thoughts?
That's tough. I have to turn the news. I actually had to tell Rainier the other day, my husband, I'm like, we cannot have the news on anymore before bed. It's going to ruin my sleep. I think it's tapered off because it seems to repeat itself a little bit right now. But I mean, that's a really good, maybe just limiting how much you watch maybe is a good idea because you do have to be informed. Unless buying a newspaper or googling it online. I feel like the news sometimes, I don't know, because they like to give so much of their own opinion instead of just report what's actually the facts that it gets so frustrating and it bothers me too. So maybe there's another outlet, like, I don't know, maybe reading online or buying a newspaper maybe.
Yeah, that's good advice. You're right. News has become, its own kind of entertainment, and you can definitely get sucked into it. Um, I'm looking to make sure. Okay, good. It looked like my computer froze, but David was just changing the view. I can actually notice that my mood actually changes when I end up sitting on the couch and watching about an hour of news. So I was in the bad habit of coming home because I was working all day, and coming home and then sitting on the couch to catch up on the news. And then an hour later, I was just in a terrible mood.
You were pissed off.
Um, yeah, and so now it's kind of like I try to like keep a couple links so that I can kind of stay informed of what's going on. I don't want to miss anything, right? This is important stuff, but I'm trying to get away from watching an hour of quote unquote news. And because I really noticed it was affecting my mood, because really what was kind of sucking me into it, news reports the worst case scenario, which we should be aware of because we need to make sure that that doesn't happen to us or that we make good decisions. But other than that, it can really start to distort your own kind of thoughts that like everything is going bad, everything is bad, it's 100% bad when your own situation may not be that bad. And so getting sucked into that can really change your mood, and you need to be aware of that. So that's a good question from Amber. So Christina, no, that was from Christina. So that was her question. Okay. So Ariana has a comment, not a question, but I want to say how much I admire Michelle as a
Oh,
as a boss and a business owner. She's the best, and I would agree with that.
thanks, Adriana. You're so sweet.
Oh, I guess Adriana, David may have had a typo there. Um, all right, I'm gonna take a peek over here and check out some more comments. A lot of comments. Thanks everyone for um, writing all this stuff. Um, something. So Amber has another comment or question. Something I also recommend was to ask a trusted friend for a quick summary regarding recommendations to keep safe for important updates. So I think she's probably commenting on that from the news perspective. So if the news is really bothering you, you could ask someone who maybe doesn't bother as much, who's kind of up to date, to just give you the facts. That's some really good practical advice there.
Yeah, that is.
So um, I'm reading another question here. Okay. So yeah, and so another comment here, just for any, so a lot of the people who have actually been through TMS treatment and are still patients, we're still in contact with people who finished. Just to remind you guys, if you are struggling with something serious, you can definitely make sure to reach out to us as well for, individual help. What Michelle and I are doing here is kind of giving, a little bit more practical advice. So, okay, we're getting some more questions. Okay, this is a good one. So, um, Andreas says, when I get anxious, sometimes I over exercise and I can hurt myself. Any recommendation on how I can do something different?
Probably for me would be going, I mean, yoga maybe
You must
instead of,
you must encounter this a lot at the studio, right? I mean, because some people can kind of, get on like a little streak where they come and like maybe overdo it. Has that been something that's come up before?
a long time ago. I mean, I think some people probably should take a break that come in and I mean, because it could, I mean, spin is intense. It's been a
Hmm.
long time, but we did have someone years ago that we had to kindly ask to like take a break, but she was just looking unhealthy, like too thin, and you could tell she was had some type of disorder, and we had known her long enough to kind of see it, where we just kind of gently requested that she kind of pull back a little bit. And but I think, even for athletes, recovery, or people who are super active, recovery is really important too. So I think people like Andreas, which is probably a little bit like me, we like those activities that like you to go go go, because that's what our mind kind of gets off on, is that movement or the loud music. And so I think that's probably just kind of retraining yourself, or telling yourself, yoga is still work, or stretching and recovery is also still part of the practice. But some people, I guess they probably use that more so for, again, like you were just saying, like not the physical but the mental, like way to de-stress. So I guess I would just recommend maybe something easier on your body, like yoga, to or stretching, to make sure that you're not putting so much impact and hurt on your body.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. That's good. All right, I'm gonna look over here. So Lauren asks, how do you manage to find time for yourself with kids? That's a great question.
Just kidding. Your life's over. I'm just kidding. Um, I unfortunately sometimes you got to get up earlier, or it's just during their nap time. It doesn't work for me every day because some days I'm just so tired myself. But my stepson's 18, and my husband and I, when my daughter went down at 3 o'clock, we all went in the garage today and we worked out. So you just gotta squeeze it in when you can, I guess. Or it's kind of hard sometimes, but to get up an extra hour early. Or I actually bought my daughter some paint and some chalk. And so while we've been at home, a lot of the times I work out outside with her, and I have her draw or do something so I can do something for myself. Or right now, I think you just can't feel guilty if you want to give the kid an extra hour on the phone or the iPad so that you don't go crazy yourself. So you just, you know, gotta,
I couldn't agree more with that's the first thing I thought of, was you got to get up early was
you
the
gotta
first
get.
thing. And then the technology as well is like, we're really in a interesting time where it's like, the kids are not having, the kids are really the ones who are really stuck at home. I mean, they're not going out for any reason, and most of the people that I've talked to. I'm super lucky, to be honest. My kids are kind of at that age where they're old enough that they can kind of do some stuff, especially if you let them have technology. But they're not too old that they're getting bored and need to go out and see their friends. I know that some of my patients that I've talked to with very young kids, this is just a very difficult time for them. And I think back to when I had three young kids at home, and if this had happened, I don't know if I would have survived mentally. I'm not even joking. That's really tough.
3 kids is a lot. I mean, one, I don't even know. Sometimes I don't know what to do with one, but I feel really bad for my 18-year-old actually. These kids right now, he's not going to have graduation or prom, or he doesn't even know if he can go to college, and he's so used to being social at this point. I think that these seniors that we have are the ones that are really
Yeah,
struggling with right now.
I agree. And Andreas says, great idea. Thank you, Michelle, for
No
your answer to
problem.
his question. Um, awesome. So I think we'll just take one or two more. Um, and I think we've got. Oh, Leandro says, great to see you guys.
Okay.
Um, I think I missed some of the ones that this thing went by so fast. I think I missed some of the ones that went through. Um, so okay, so I think we're going to kind of wrap things up because I think I missed some of the ones that went through before, and I think we're all caught up. Um, I want to give you a second to kind of wrap up with your studio and tell people because there's a lot of people from NeuroSpa who may not know about your studio. I'd like it's a really great place to go and spend and exercise and connect with other people. Do you want to say a couple words?
I mean, we'd love to have anybody that'd like to pop in that's not familiar with us. And if you reference NeuroSpa, we'll give you a class on the house, and hopefully we'll be open sooner rather than later. But I actually would just like to say thank you, Dr. Upshaw, for what you're doing in the community. Like I said before, I'm lucky to know a good person like you. And so I think that makes it even so much better what you're doing to help people who are, struggling with depression and anxiety. And because I don't know, you're just not like an everyday doctor who's kind of out there to make a buck or whatever it is. You're definitely out there, and knowing you personally and your wife and what good people you are doing really good things for Tampa Bay. So thank you, and thank you for having me on here with you.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. And I'd like to say that I was really excited to hear that you were willing to come and do this with me because, there's a lot of people in the community.
And I know
What's that?
I'm sweating the whole time with nerves, but thanks for having
No,
me.
you did awesome. And I'll tell you, so many people really look up to you in the community just because like the type of person you are and the energy that you bring to the studio and all the great things you do for the community. So I think the opportunity to hear some people who know you kind of talk frankly about what you're dealing with and give some practical tips on what you're doing, I think has probably meant a lot to some people. So I really appreciate you coming on. And just I think um, I've been talking to a couple other people who are on, media channels and things like that, and this has just been an opportunity where just people talking like this is just helpful. And
Yeah,
so,
open conversations are good. Yeah, we're all on the same page somewhere or another, and so I don't think anybody should feel like they're fighting this fight alone at any time.
oh, okay, I was going to let you go, but there was one more thing that there's been a couple questions real quick that David brought back up about sleep and impact on sleep. How have you been sleeping okay?
I actually do sleep pretty good, but I take my little I don't even know how they're OLLY, these little melatonin gummies. And I'm out like a light. Like I sleep really good with those. So I was actually, I don't know, TMI, but I was someone that had to take Ambien for years, and then got off cold turkey because we did IVF to have my daughter, and you're not allowed to have those. And I still struggled a little bit, but I mean, have a kid if you need to sleep because they will exhaust you if you're having sleeping problems. But melatonin has really been a lifesaver for me because I took that for so long because I never did sleep really well. And so I'm sleeping fine, but I pop 2 of those every night and I get a good sleep.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I'm still sleeping okay as well, but that's the canary in the coal mine for me, and really for mental health in general. If you're not
Yeah,
sleeping, that means that you're too stressed out, and then it becomes a vicious cycle where you're not sleeping, and then now you're also tired and you're less, excuse me, able to deal with things that come up. So,
yeah.
you know, I think that's a really good question. I think in general, eating well and getting good exercise and trying to relieve stress, maybe doing some yoga or meditation before bed is helpful. But if you really can't sleep, that would be a sign, like I talked about at the beginning of this YouTube live event, that would be a time to go seek some professional help for sure. And, you could call us for that, but yeah, that's the time to do that.
Super
So
important.
So I think that's a good one to wrap up on. Again, thanks for joining us. And if you guys like this, YouTube presentation, please subscribe. We're trying to build, a little community here where we can get on and answer people's questions and like the video, I guess that David tells me to say. But thanks again, Michelle.
Thank you, Dr. Upshaw. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
All right. Have a good night, guys. Okay. We're going to sign off now.
Bye.
Bye. We're going to sign off as soon as David cuts us off. Gotcha.